Hi, and welcome to Stream and Record Video with OBS. I'm Deeth. I'm a digital services technician with Richmond Public Library, and with me today.
I'm James. I'm also a digital services technician with Richmond Public Library.
And today, this is episode 3, we're going to talk about what are OBS scenes and how do I use them. So, James, what are OBS scenes?
That's a very good question, Deeth. OBS scenes. So OBS is a program. If you haven't tuned into our other videos, it's a program that you can use to take a whole bunch of different videos and browser windows and put them all into one place so that you can record it. So for example, if you look at Deeth and I right now, I'm at one branch of the library and Deeth is in a totally different branch. And below us, the title is actually from LibreOffice. So we are taking a whole bunch of different things and putting it into one. And scenes are a really good way of organizing all of those different types of video and browser windows that you are trying to use to create your video. So if you see below us on the left-hand side, that's where we have our scenes, and just to the right of that are all of the things that are inside of that scene. So this is a good way of, if you want to switch between different videos and switch between browser windows and you have more than one in a theme, this is a really good way of making sure that you have all of that organized so that you have a consistent look.
Yeah. And I wish I could show clicking on these different scenes to show you what they are, but if I do that, it will switch scenes because we're actually recording OBS from within OBS. I can just step through real quick and talk about what some of them are. The first one I have is just called Start, and it shows just the background, the kind of tunnel effect there, and the titles. And the second one is Intro, which is the same as Start, but also plays our intro music. And then I switch to Head and Title, which is what you just saw with James and I, with our heads floating above the titles. So that's the background, the titles, which, as James said, are coming from LibreOffice. James's view, which is coming from Zoom. My view, which is coming from the built-in webcam on this computer. And an audio input to capture the microphone from this computer. So all of those are mixed into that head and titles one, which is heads and title, which is the third scene there. Head and browser is the same, but instead of showing the background and the titles, it has our heads superimposed on the browser if we need that. Then I have one for browser only to get our heads out of the picture. We don't use all of these for every episode, but they're there as shortcuts to get to them when we need them. And then I have OBS in OBS, which is where we are now, and that's highlighted there, and you can see that the fact that you can see the scenes list and the sources list and the little audio mixer going on there, that's actually OBS recording itself. And I can hide, I have in that scene, you can see the sources. I have a screenshot, which is currently invisible. I have head and titles, which is a whole nother scene. That first scene where James and I were introducing ourselves is embedded in this one. Then I have OBS recording itself and then an audio input. And so if I hide the scene with James and I, then you're going to see an infinite regression of OBS recording itself, and it's going to get smaller and smaller off into the distance. So that's why I have another scene superimposed above that, just to hide that, because it can be kind of distracting. Then I have another scene for the outro that is basically exactly the same as the intro, but I have a different hotkey for it to play the music going out. You could also set up different music for the end of the program than at the beginning. And then end switches, just like start, it's just the titles and the background until I hit stop recording. Each of these scenes, and I'm not sure, depending on the resolution of your screen, you may or may not be able to read them or see that each one starts with a number. And that's my naming convention. That's not built into OBS, but I associate each of these scenes with a different keyboard key, which gets us back into switching between scenes, James.
Yeah, so you can switch in between scenes so my example is going to be if you want to have intro music and exit music because you have an ongoing live stream or ongoing video that you're making for YouTube, and the only content you're really changing is either the podcast portion where you're talking or I guess the vlog portion of it. And the intro and exit are always going to be the same, then intro and exit can be their own scenes. And then you can have a third scene, it's sort of a middle scene, so that that's the one that you're going to always update. And you can switch between them in kind of several ways. You can either just mouse click on them, and so you can mouse click onto the one that you want, and that'll switch it over. You can use the studio portion of it, and you can set it up sort of more automatic. I have to admit I've never done that because I can't figure it out. I think you'd have to watch somebody else's video on how to do that part. Or you can set up keyboard shortcuts as well, which Deeth is going to show you how to do, because keyboard shortcuts will also allow you to just click on the keyboard and then the shortcut. So will take you to that particular scene. So on Deeth's naming convention, if you want to go from 1 to 4, I would click on number 4 with my mouse, but Deeth would just I gather the number 4 is your shortcut.
Yeah, and unfortunately, when I'm capturing OBS in OBS, it won't show me pop-up windows or dialog boxes. So I'm going to talk you through this. But essentially, to set up keyboard shortcuts, I go up to the top menu. I'm on a Mac. It'll be slightly different, but basically the same process if you're on Windows. So on a Mac, I go up to the OBS window and choose Preferences. On Windows, you would also get to Preferences or Options, whatever they call it, and it pops up a dialog with lots and lots of different options for the streaming, for output, for audio. I'm going to go just down the top. Like there are tabs. There's 7 tabs for different options, and I'm going to go to the 6th one, which is hotkeys. And there are many things that you can assign hotkeys to, and it will group. It has a bunch of just general ones, like you can start streaming, stop streaming, start recording, stop recording, and then it has hotkeys specific to each scene you have set up. And the hotkeys will let you either switch to the scene, show and hide elements in every source in the scene. You can have short hotkeys for those. And what I do is I just set up. I'm simple. I just set up a hotkey to switch to each scene, and I use the keypad numerals. So and then I name the scene to match which key I've assigned it to. And you can do this for each profile, I believe. So when at the very top menu of OBS, it has a couple things. One is scene collection, so you can name a group of scenes, and you can also have a profile. And I basically keep those in sync for every program I do. So each program has its own profile and its own scene collection. So I can, when I go into the videos I do for Scratch, my scene collection has the right backgrounds, and it has the right intro and outro music, and the right hotkeys all set up for those scenes. So that is how I switch between scenes. I still click on them sometimes too, but when I remember, I use the hotkeys. And if you could see my computer right now, I have Post-it notes along the bottom that show things like which are the most used hotkeys for specific programs. So that is that. So we've talked about switching scenes. We've talked about hotkeys. The other thing that you can do with with sources really, but mixing scenes into it is you can have as many cameras as you want and switch between different views. So on the nightly news, the people might turn to one camera and then turn away to another, and then cut to a camera that's on the weatherman or weather person who's probably in front of a green screen themselves. And we can do that with OBS. We can have scenes with different camera views or mix a bunch of cameras in one. So I've actually got an external webcam as well as the built-in one. So here, if I needed to go and explain some detail, I could have a whiteboard, or right now I just have paper, so we can have...
We should have had you do a weather map.
Yeah. This can use source. You can reuse sources. And this one might have source 1, 3. In any case, you can do all sorts of different things with that. Now, the other things you can do with scenes and sources. James, he's using Zoom. So in Zoom, he has set his background. But in OBS, you can also set backgrounds, and you can set them to be anything. So you can have them animated. You could have your background be another scene. You could have it be something happening on a web page. And once you have added the camera, so I am being recorded by the built-in webcam. So if I go to that, I can. There's a menu that pops up, and I'm going to choose filters, and it's going to look something like this. I've done a image capture of it because, as I said before, it doesn't show the dialog boxes when it pops up. It won't record them. But this is what it looks like. And so I've got this one filter that I've added. There's a plus down here to add filters, which is chroma key. And that's what the technical term is for green screens. You can do chroma key in different colors. I have green, which is the default. And because I'm in the classroom at Richmond Public Library's Brighouse branch, we actually have a huge green screen in this room that we can deploy. And so I've been using that a lot for my programs because it's here. It works pretty well with all of the default settings. I did have to tweak these settings one time when I forgot that I was recording and wore a green shirt in. And so I had to, it was a different shade than the screen, fortunately. And so I was able to get the settings to where I could, I wasn't just a ghostly head floating in space. But that's the only time I've had to actually adjust the defaults for the settings here.
And kind of interesting too, the reason why green is the default is because very few people have green eyes.
Oh.
Most people either have blue or brown eyes.
Right.
So that's why the default is green.
Right.
So in the rare case where somebody might have green eyes, then blue screen is usually the default for that. But if you don't have access to a green screen, you can always just put up a green sheet behind you or a sheet of another color, and then just adjust a chroma key to the color of that sheet. Yeah,
and there are also plugins for Zoom that I think there are some that would let you do what, or not for Zoom, for OBS, that would let you do similar to what Zoom does, which is to subtract a static background. So basically, you can step out of the scene, does Zoom even make you step out of the scene, or it just notices what things don't change between frames and removes those? But
It just notices what doesn't move. You don't have
Right.
to step out.
which is it's interesting because like with the green screen, it makes my hair a little funny color at the top, but with the zoom effect, it looks like you have a halo around where your headphones are.
Yeah.
So different technologies for doing these. I know the Mac program photo booth. You would step out of the scene and it would take a picture of your background, and then when you step back in, it would remove everything that matched the background, and it could do a pretty good job of faking a green screen without a green screen. So there's different techniques that you can use to get the same basic effect of just the person talking, and then you can replace the background with anything. Just don't do what the was it a senator in the U.S.? I think it was a state senator in Ohio, had a background of his office, but he was wearing a seatbelt, and it turned out he was driving while zooming. And don't do that. All right. I think we have actually covered all of our topics for today. So we have one more episode coming up where we'll tie all of this together. And other than that, I think we're all good. Thank you for joining me today, James.
Oh, thank you for having me, Deef.
I hope you've all found something useful that you've learned from today's episode. The mixing the different sources and the scenes can be slightly unintuitive at first, because when you create a scene, it has nothing in it, and you just have to add sources. But once you've got your scene set up and you can switch between them, OBS suddenly becomes very powerful and fairly easy to use at that point. And again, we've been learning all of this as we go along, and you can certainly do the same. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
All right. See you.